Something that we never talk about in the church and how to deal with it is conflict. And you might be wondering, why are we talking about conflict during membership? Because when you enter in a membership, you're entering into a family, you're making a commitment, and there are times in families where disagreements happen and conflict is inevitable. So we want to discuss our philosophy and ways of dealing with conflict. There is a way to manage conflict and disagreements that comes from the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17. It says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church, and if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. In our attempt to be a church family and work together, we can be sure of 2 things. We will not agree at every point, and we have to extend forgiveness to each other. So how do we work toward reconciliation? We will work with a simple formula when someone sins against you. Go directly to the person. If that doesn't work, involve another person as well, a safe person. Third, if that doesn't work, involve Pastor Wayne or myself or one of the pastors. And finally, if that doesn't work, you can involve one of our liaisons to our board. We call this a staff parish relations committee. We have a board structure, and in our board, we have one person that is designated as a liaison to help us discern and work through issues. So how do we live out this formula as a church family? The first thing is understand the difference between hurt feelings and being sinned against. The Greek word used is hamartia, which literally means miss the mark. The mark or standard missed is God's holy law. To paraphrase the intent of the original language, we could say, if a Christian brother or sister clearly misses the mark so that his or her conduct toward you is a violation of God's holy law, go and tell them his or her fault. The fact that Christ is discussing real sin, an actual violation of God's law, is important for 2 reasons. It means that Christians should not take offense over personality differences, cultural differences, socioeconomic differences, and so on. Furthermore, there are many rubs and offenses that occur in life that may not be directly the result of sin. Some Christians are offended over trivial matters that are not sins at all. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12 says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers a multitude of sins. Plainly, every rub and offense cannot be raised and settled. We must learn in love to forgive and pass by many slight annoyances and offenses. Much heartbreak and much needless trouble often comes of offenses which exist only in our imagination. We have to choose to think the best in people rather than always being suspicious of others without real cause. The person who has a judgmental, suspicious spirit often is guilty of accusing others of bad motives where none exist, and of misrepresenting things that are innocent acts. The second factor is, how are you to approach someone who has sinned against you? It's with humility. You do not go to punish and humiliate the other person, but to help and reconcile. Receiving personal satisfaction for our hurt feelings is not our primary goal. Being heard and the reconciliation of the relationship is our primary goal. As a church, and as a church family, we aren't going to take satisfaction in the downfall of another person. We're called to act out of a spirit of love, concern, and humility, which runs throughout Matthew chapter 18. Another factor is to point out the wrong in a calm, rational manner. You are there to convince, to win over the other person. You will almost certainly not succeed at your task if you lose control of your temper and heap insults on the other person. Acting like an arrogant jerk is not the way to convince anybody. Remember, this is your sister or brother for whom Christ died. No matter what the other person has done, place the other person above yourself. Do not act in a way that would undermine the goal of reconciliation and restoration. Another factor is to listen carefully. No matter how convinced you are that you are right, you must carefully listen to and weigh the offender's argument. You could be wrong. You must consider the possibility that your accusation may be a mistake. Even if you believe that you have an open and shut case, you must give that other person a thorough opportunity to respond. Thirdly, there is no reason to talk with 4 other people about your issue with someone else. Go directly to them. And remember, the goal is reconciliation. But things will not get better on their own. Avoidance doesn't work. The most common reason why we don't talk to others when we're sideways is because it's difficult. There's a fear of offending the other person, losing a friend, or making an enemy. Most people hate conflict, so the fear of approaching another person must be overcome. What happens if we avoid confronting? We disobey Christ's command. Therefore, disregarding what Jesus says is not an option for Christians. Ignoring it because you hate conflict does not eliminate it, it only postpones it. By going immediately, it eliminates the temptation to gossip and damage another person. For many, it's easier to talk with others rather than go to the person. So I'd encourage you, Mosaic, as you enter into this membership, to enter in knowing that conflict is inevitable. But if we manage it the way that Jesus taught us to, reconciliation and forgiveness is possible.